A little background information. My mother left me some money before she passed away. She was a chef in a high-end restaurant. I had always dreamt of opening a restaurant with her, but after she passed away, I didn't know what to do. I finished my bachelor in hospitality management, and after graduating, my cousin, who also did BHM, and I decided to open a small restaurant. We worked really hard for the next 3 years, and were finally able to open a bigger restaurant in a popular area. Our restaurant was always filled with people, and we were making good money. At this point, I wanted to go back to my studies and complete my MHM. I was 26 already, and I wanted to finish my education before turning 30. My cousin, who's the co-owner and the manager, was happy to look after the restaurant. I was occupied with studies for the next 6 months, so I only came to the restaurant on weekends. This happened a few weeks ago. I was busy with my examinations and assignments, so I hadn't been to the restaurant in a month. I finally had the weekend off, so I quickly got dressed in my casual clothes and went out. My cousin was out in the front of the restaurant talking to a customer. I waved at him, and he quickly told me that he was thankful that I came because he had some business to take care of. I went through the back door and found a woman in her mid-40s lighting a cigarette in the dressing room. For a second, I was surprised. I didn't know who she was, but she was wearing the waitress uniform. I understood that she must be the new hire my cousin was talking about. He had told me that an old woman pleaded to be hired and that he thought she was okay, so he hired her as a part-timer. We usually give people a chance, even if they aren't well educated, because we think it'll help them grow. So, I asked her what she was doing, and she quickly crushed the cigarette under her feet. She looked scornfully at me and then observed my outfit. Then she proceeded to say that she was only checking something and I wanted to scold her, but I got a call from my professor, so I couldn't talk to her. I went out through the back door and took the call. When I finished, I saw the same woman practically throwing the garbage bag in the alley instead of putting it in the trash can. I had never seen someone so ignorant as her before, so I walked towards her. The rest of the conversation basically went like this. EW, entitled waitress. Me. Me, duh. Me. Why are you throwing the garbage in your street when there's a huge trash can there? EW. Because I can. Who are you, young lady, to tell me what I should and should not do? Me. You are the new hire, right? EW. And who the hell are you? I saw you in the locker room. Did you really come in here dressed in ripped jeans? This is a workplace. I can't imagine someone like you being hired in such a big restaurant. I was only there to check if everything was alright, so I wore my casual clothes. We had a strict uniform, and I usually wore suits or formal clothes when I was working. I have a baby face, so when I am out without my makeup in my casual clothes, I am always mistaken for being 19 or 20 years old. I asked her what her problem was, and told her to put the garbage bag where it belonged. I knew that she was going to curse, or probably throw a fit. I have dealt with such people for the most part of my career. I turned my back to walk back to the kitchen, and I felt a push. The next thing that happened was that I found myself on the ground beside the dirty garbage bags. I took one look at her, and she sneered and said, "Oh, you are finally where you belong. Your generation needs to learn respect." I told her that she had gone too far. She snickered and pitifully looked at me and went, "Me? I don't think so. Look at the clothes you are wearing. There's no way you should be allowed to work here. You probably live in a dumpster, much like this one, and you're trying to pay off your student loans. I have a job to do now. This is your home now, so be here and don't try to dictate how I should do my own job." I stand up and watch her get inside the building. Thankfully, I didn't get any bruises, but my clothes got dirty. I quickly went to the locker room and put on a white t-shirt. I decided that I would fire her immediately because there was no way we were going to keep a bully like her. I was sure my cousin wasn't even aware of her behavior because she had only been here for the last few days. As soon as I got out of the locker room, I heard a commotion coming from the seating area. Without a doubt, I know it's her. She had only been in the restaurant for a couple of days and she was already wreaking havoc. Anyway, I see EW arguing with a customer. I asked another server what happened, and she told me that it was the third time it happened in the last 4 days. Apparently, she misheard the order, didn't bother to check twice, And when the customer demanded a replacement, she basically argued. I was fuming. I put on my nicest smile, told the waitress to move, and patiently offered the customer a replacement and a discount on the bill. The waitress pulled strange faces and mumbled something. Then she stomped her feet and headed to the kitchen. I looked at the customer and apologized, assuring her that it would never happen again. The customer smiled weakly and complained about the server. I rushed to the kitchen and called the waitress out. She looked bored and rolled her eyes as she walked towards me. I asked her to hand out her ID immediately. You are no longer a worker here, I announced. She looked at me as if I were some criminal. Huh? Who the hell are you to talk to me like this? She asked. I declared that I was the boss and she should have been on her best behavior if she really wanted to work in our restaurant. I knew she was going to spew some bullcrap, and she did. EW. No, you are not. I have already been interviewed by the boss and he hired me. You weren't even there. Boss and you? Keep dreaming and live in that dumpster because that's where you should be. Me. That's my cousin. He's a co-owner. I was busy with exams and that's why I couldn't be here. Now that I am, I don't want to hear any more of your bullcrap. You have already gone too far. You've been a bully and you are negligent towards your duties. Did you think we did nothing here? Did you think you can be rude to our regular customers who have done nothing wrong and get away with it? Get out of my restaurant. At this point, her face turned red. She was embarrassed and angry. There was truly no hint of remorse in her face. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You can't do that to me. You have got no right to fire me." I could hear the customers whispering, so I asked her to remove herself peacefully. She declared that she was old and demanded to let her keep her job. She mocked me again and said that the younger generation needed to respect the older generation and that it wasn't her mistake. I was being incredibly patient and told her once more to leave the premises. She threw a glass of water on me and said, "The lady spoke with an accent. That's why I misheard. It's her mistake. You're probably a high school student or college freshman anyway. There's no way you were qualified for a job like this." I was fuming. My clothes were wet and I didn't know how to handle her anymore. She kept going on about how she was old and needed the job. Then she told me that I didn't deserve to have such a big restaurant under me and that I didn't even know how to dress properly. You were dumb as hell. You gave her free food and you think you're running a business? Just because you got a little money doesn't mean you will last. I don't want to hear from you anymore. Call the manager. I will talk about this with him and only him. She kept chanting those words. I called my cousin and asked him to come as soon as possible. He arrived in the next 10 minutes and I told him what happened. My cousin asked her to hand over the ID politely but sternly. We had already caused a bit of ruckus and nobody wanted to drag it out anymore. But of course, the EW wouldn't let it go. She kept demanding my cousin to not take my side. Like imagine, because I was young and not qualified for this in her eyes. She emphasized how I didn't have any idea on what I was doing. Then she proceeded to say, "Did she tell you that it was the customer's mistake and she got them a replacement as well as a discount? That's no way to run a business. She will ruin it." We stood there in silence in visible disgust. Nobody had the energy to argue with her anymore. I finally replied, "I'm completing my master's in hospitality management. You haven't even finished your high school. Did you think I didn't know? I am way more qualified than you." If she could shoot daggers with her eyes, she would have already killed me. College doesn't mean anything. I don't need to have a degree. I shouldn't have to bother with such silly things. I deserve happiness, and I deserve to do whatever I want. The servers were laughing. We weren't even mad anymore. My cousin extended his hands and signaled her to give back her ID. She grabbed a handful of spoons and threw it on the floor. We were not astonished by her behavior anymore. EW. I am going to sue you. This is unfair. I am fired on unfair grounds. And you, I will make sure you regret this day for the rest of your life. I will take you to court, and I will take your restaurant later. And then she stomped her feet again and walked to the changing room. We were all quiet and waiting for her to get out. She finally got out after 15 long minutes. She said one last time, "I deserve better. I deserve better things than you. You aren't even good enough to have such things." I didn't want her to have the last word, so I replied, "There's no way you will live like me. No way you can ever have a restaurant like this. Unlike you, I have always been honest and sincere towards my work. I respect my workers and my peers. Enough with your bull crap and don't show your face again." She left through the front door, cursing us and showing us the middle finger. The customers were surprised. We apologized to everyone and we heard a loud bang outside. Of course, she kicked one of the doors as she was leaving. It was really the most frustrating thing I have ever had to tackle. We really dodged a bullet there. So, to set the scene, it was Easter Sunday and I, 20-year-old female, was actually pretty excited to help my mom get ready. I was cooking, cleaning, and overall had the mindset that I was going to be a responsible young adult. My mom, of course, was absolutely thrilled and was bragging for the first half of the time about how grown up I was and how I was more mature than she ever was at my age. Her words, not mine. After eating, my little siblings decided to go to their rooms and goof around on their phones. And normally I do the same. But this year, I felt like I should be the adult that I had been built up to be and stay for the adult conversation. I felt I was polite and I didn't speak much, only when a comment was directed at me. I stayed for a good hour or so. Then my mom gets close to me and whispers, "Leave." I'm pretty astonished because I was just giving for the most part. I do leave and then come back later after at least another hour. We're talking again, and I had a funny story about when I was little. My mom, of course, decided to repeatedly talk over me and take control of the conversation by telling the story herself. I was more than peeved. Then a few minutes later, she pulls the leave card again. I, of course, do as I'm told because I'm too gobsmacked to do much else. The party ends and people leave, and it's just me, my dad, and my mom in the front room. Conversation goes as followed, most paraphrased because I don't have a very good memory. Me: "Mom, I feel like you were talking over me during the conversation." Mom: "No, I wasn't." Dad: "Actually, you were." Mom: "I was just excited. She shouldn't have even been there. It was for adults only." Me: "I'm 20. You even said I was being mature, and when you asked me to leave, I was kind of surprised because of all that you had said." Mom: "But you're still not an adult." At this point, I just left my room. Over the course of a couple weeks, my mom made me rehash the whole situation and made excuses for her behavior, like that she hadn't seen her cousin in a long time. They just had a whole night out the day before, among other things, and honestly, I did write it out now, or else I'm sure that the memory would have replaced with whatever narrative my mom wanted me to believe. I don't know what the heck is wrong with your family. I had a place at the grown-ups table and was included in conversations on all adult subjects at any family gatherings from the age of 13 or 14. Are you a Mormon or something? Mennonite? Obviously religion comes into play somewhere here because we're talking about a Christian holiday dinner. How deep are you in your family's pocket? It might be time for you to start acting the adult in full and just get the heck out of there. My family may be deeply flawed in many ways. We at least treat each other nicely. We're just non-denominational Christians, Mexican in ethnicity, but completely Americanized to the point where sometimes I forget I'm not white. My assumption is that she celebrated how mature you are when you were cooking and cleaning because A, you were helping take the workload off her, and B, it's a chance for her to gloat about how well you were raised, how well she raised you to be specific. You wanting to sit with the other adults and talk comes with no benefit like that for her. So you're placed back into the kid category and shooed away. Again, that's my assumption, could be wrong, but either way, your mom acted very rude. You're in TA, even though this is the wrong sub for that. Anytime she rehashes it, just stick to the fact that her actions made you feel disrespected and unwanted, when you also wanted time to speak to your relatives and that your adulthood isn't conditional. I have epilepsy. It's very weird. Like, I don't have grand mal seizures very often, but I get absent seizures, and those seizures where you shake but don't convulse. Well, this happened when I was in high school. All of my teachers knew about my absent seizures, including Karen teacher, KT. I had just been put on oxcarbazepine, generic for trileptal, and the main side effect was having seizures more often. I had an absent seizure in KT's class, and my friend who sat next to me, Y, began to try to snap me out of it. KT: "OP, why aren't you doing what I told the class to do?" Y: "She has epilepsy. She's having an absent seizure. Just let me get her back to reality. KT, my cousin has epilepsy and convulses when she has them. So she doesn't have epilepsy and is just faking it. OP, if you don't do what I assign in the next moment, you will have detention. Y, she has a massive email to all our teachers about the epilepsy with a doctor documentation that she does indeed have it. You cannot send her to the office for detention for a medical issue and that she has no control over. KT, I can and I will do so when I see fit. Y, if you don't like it, then you can go with her. Now to note, I have only had 2 grand mal seizures in my life, once when I was 16 and once when I was 18. Haven't had one since, thank God, but I definitely have epilepsy. Y, I'll report your butt to the Board of Education if you try to do that to KT. That's not her fault. S1, yeah, she's got a medical condition, KT, so therefore you cannot send her out by law for this. He was doing college classes for lawyer career path. KT, OP, wake the freak up now, you lying witch. You don't have freaking epilepsy. KT reached out to touch me, and Y and S1 both jumped up and guarded me. As with absent seizures, you don't touch a person when they're in one. Y had another student go to the principal who has KT taken to the office, and then I snapped out of it, thank God. KT was fired for intimidating students and trying to touch a student without their permission. Recently, she found me on Facebook and berated me for getting her fired. I didn't, Y's dad did, and causing her own kids to be taken and put into the foster care system because she didn't have the money to take care for them. Turns out she got her kids taken because she didn't believe that her youngest had an allergy to peanuts and purposefully packed them PB&J sandwiches for lunch to prove that her daughter was faking the allergy. Her daughter almost died from anaphylaxis. When I was a kid, I had a classmate with Tourette syndrome. Her tic was to suddenly flap her hands in front of her for a moment. We had a teacher who was adamant that Tourette syndrome was New Age malarkey and that the solution was discipline. After about a month of shouting at her and constantly sending her to the principal's office, her father brought her to school one morning and verbally ripped the teacher a new arse in front of the whole class with threats of lawsuits.